Chapter 1, The Test. Ryan Jones had learned, over the years, that emails from Susan Reynolds rarely came with exclamation points. They didn't need them. So when the subject line simply read, "Please come see me," Ryan saved his spreadsheet, shut down his workstation, and stood without a second glance at the clock. Thursday afternoons in accounts payable were predictably slow, the kind of lull that made people chatty or careless. Ryan had learned not to waste either habit. He adjusted the sleeves of his button-down as he walked, nodding to Carla at the copier and exchanging a quick grin with Marcus near the break room. Ryan was friendly without being familiar, approachable without oversharing. 5 years in the company had taught him that balance mattered. Susan's office sat at the far end of the executive wing. Glass walls, clean lines, understated power. She believed in transparency as a concept, not a decoration. Ryan knocked once. "Come in," Susan said. The door opened on a scene Ryan hadn't expected. Susan Reynolds sat behind her desk, posture impeccable, expression unreadable. To her right stood a man and a woman in tailored suits, both mid-40s, both with the kind of stillness that suggested authority rather than ambition. Susan looked up. "Ryan, thank you for coming so quickly." "Of course," Ryan said, stepping inside. His gaze flicked briefly to the visitors, then back to Susan. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes. Please have a seat." She gestured to the chair opposite her desk. "These are Special Agent Thomas Keller and Special Agent Dana Morales, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Ryan blinked once, then sat. The agents nodded politely. "Mr. Jones," Keller said, voice calm. "Thank you for your time." Ryan gave a small smile. "I'm guessing this isn't about late invoices." Morales's mouth twitched despite herself. Susan folded her hands on the desk. "They're here regarding one of our long-term suppliers, Hawthorne Industrial." Ryan's spine straightened. Hawthorne supplied nearly 30% of the company's core materials. Losing them would be catastrophic. "They're under investigation," Susan continued, "for fraud and extortion. The agents can't share details, but the risk of Hawthorne going out of business is significant." Ryan exhaled slowly. "That would halt production." "Yes," Susan said. "Within 6 weeks." Keller leaned forward. "We're advising all dependent partners to prepare contingencies." Ryan looked between them. "And you need me because?" Susan slid a manila folder across the desk. "This," she said, "is your first real test." Ryan didn't open the folder immediately. He'd learned long ago that Susan valued restraint. "You have 3 months," she said, "to identify, vet, and secure a new supplier capable of scaling to our production demands without compromising quality or ethics." Ryan finally opened the folder. Inside were specifications, compliance requirements, timelines, cost analyses, and a daunting list of constraints. "This is typically handled by senior procurement leadership," Ryan said carefully. "Yes," Susan replied, "and they're already overloaded. I want to see how you approach complexity when the stakes are real." Morales studied him openly. "No pressure." Ryan let out a short laugh. "I've cleaned restrooms at 2 in the morning here. Pressure's relative." Susan's lips curved, just barely. Keller stood. "We'll let you get to work, Mr. Jones." "Thank you." The agents exited, leaving the office suddenly quieter. Susan waited until the door closed before speaking again. "I didn't choose you because you're family," she said, her tone firm. "I chose you because you listen, you learn, and people trust you. That matters more than titles." Ryan met her gaze. "I won't let you down." "I know," Susan said. She reached into the folder and pulled out a small yellow post-it, sliding it toward him. "I believe in you, Ryan." Her handwriting was precise, elegant, unmistakable. Something tightened in his chest. Ryan stood, folder tucked under his arm. "I'll start immediately. I expect nothing less." As he turned to leave, Susan added, "And Ryan, yes, this isn't about replacing Hawthorne." He paused. "It's about proving to yourself that you're ready." Ryan nodded once and left the office. The hallway felt longer on the way back. 3 months. 1 chance. A legacy that wasn't his by blood, but by choice. Ryan glanced down at the post-it again, then squared his shoulders and walked on. Chapter 2, The Woman from Procurement. By Monday morning, Ryan had a color-coded spreadsheet, a short list of potential suppliers, and a dull ache between his shoulders from sleeping with his jaw clenched. He liked structure. Structure made panic manageable. Hawthorne's possible collapse loomed over every line item. Susan had given him autonomy, but autonomy came with consequences. Ryan had spent the weekend researching domestic suppliers, overseas manufacturers, compliance histories, labor practices, and transportation logistics. Every promising option came with a caveat. Every affordable one came with a risk. The most intriguing name on the list was Carter and Vale Procurement Consulting. They weren't a manufacturer. They were brokers, ethical middlemen with a reputation for vetting suppliers others missed. Expensive, selective, and reportedly allergic to corporate nonsense. Ryan stared at the contact info, then picked up the phone. "Carter and Vale," a woman answered. "This is Emily." Her voice was brisk but warm, like someone who smiled while telling you no. "Hi." Ryan said. My name's Ryan Jones. I'm calling from… I know who you are, she said. He paused. You do? Yes. You've been calling for 3 days. Ryan blinked. I haven't. No, she agreed pleasantly. But 3 of your colleagues have. I told them we weren't available. Ryan leaned back in his chair. That's efficient. Thank you. So what makes you different? He smiled despite himself. I didn't start by asking for a meeting. There was a beat of silence. Fair, Emily said. What do you want, Mr. Jones? Ryan, he corrected. And I'm looking for a supplier who can replace 30% of our production capacity without compromising quality, ethics, or timeline. I'm aware that sounds impossible. It does. But I'm also aware that you don't take impossible calls unless they're interesting. Another pause. Longer this time. Can you be at our office tomorrow at 10? She asked. Yes. Good. Bring your specs. And your patience. The line went dead. Ryan stared at his phone, then let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Carter and Vale occupied the 3rd floor of a renovated brick building downtown. Exposed beams, plants that were definitely real, and a receptionist who looked up from her tablet and smiled like she already knew the ending. Ryan Jones, he said. She's expecting you, the receptionist replied, pointing. Conference room B. And good luck. That felt ominous. Emily Carter was standing when he walked in. She was about his age, maybe early 30s, wearing dark slacks, a soft gray blouse, and glasses that she removed immediately, as if to get a clearer look at him. Her hair was pulled back in a low, practical ponytail. Her expression was sharp, curious, and entirely unimpressed. You're younger than I expected, she said. You're blunter than I expected, Ryan replied, setting his folder down. Her mouth curved. Sit. He did. Emily took her seat across from him and opened a notebook already filled with tidy, aggressive handwriting. Before we begin, she said, you should know that we don't rescue companies from their own bad decisions. Ryan nodded. That's fair. And we don't cut corners. Good. And we don't tolerate executives who think charm is a substitute for competence. Ryan smiled. I rely on spreadsheets for that. She laughed once, quick and surprised, then stopped herself. All right, she said. Show me what you've got. Ryan slid the folder across the table. These are our production needs, compliance standards, and a breakdown of what we can and can't compromise on. Emily flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing slightly. You did this yourself? Yes. No assistant? No. No procurement team? I am the procurement team, Ryan said. For now. She looked up at him again, reassessing. And what happens in 3 months if you fail? She asked. Ryan considered lying. He didn't. Production slows. People get furloughed. Some get laid off. Emily's pen stilled. That's honest, she said quietly. It's accurate. She closed the folder. You're in over your head. I know. So why are you here? Ryan folded his hands. Because I've worked every level of that company. I've cleaned the floors at night and balanced accounts during the day. And I won't let a bad supplier decision undo 5 years of people's lives. Emily studied him for a long moment. Then she leaned back in her chair. Okay, Ryan Jones, she said. Here's the deal. I'll take you on as a client. But I won't promise miracles. I'm not asking for miracles. Good. I charge extra for those. He smiled. What do you need from me? Transparency, she said. Speed. And no surprises. Ryan hesitated for half a second too long. Emily caught it immediately. No surprises, she repeated more firmly. You'll have them, he said. Just not the kind that compromise ethics or legality. That's not what I asked. Ryan met her gaze. I don't lie, but I don't always volunteer everything immediately. Emily tilted her head. That's a politician's answer. It's an accountant's, he countered. She snorted. Fine. We'll start with a preliminary supplier sweep. I'll send you a list by the end of the week. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. This is the easy part. Ryan stood, gathering his folder. One more thing, Emily added. He paused. You don't look like someone who enjoys power, she said. He considered that. I enjoy responsibility. Her smile softened, just slightly. See you soon, Ryan. As he left the building, Ryan felt something unfamiliar under the weight of pressure and deadlines. Anticipation. And, annoyingly, hope. Chapter 3, Graveyard Lessons. The first supplier list Emily sent over arrived at 6:12 a.m. on Friday. Ryan was already awake. He sat at his kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone lukewarm and a legal pad filled with notes that looked like the product of a conspiracy theorist rather than an accountant. Arrows, boxes, questions circled 3 times. He liked clarity. He was currently living without it. His laptop chimed. From Emily Carter. Subject, preliminary sweep. The attachment was meticulous. 23 potential suppliers across 3 countries, each flagged with risk assessments, labor audits, environmental compliance notes, and historical reliability scores. She'd even annotated which ones would look good to a board but fail under pressure. Ryan let out a low whistle. Okay, he murmured. I see you. He spent the morning cross-checking the list against internal data, production needs, and transportation realities. By noon, he had narrowed it to 6. By 2, it was 4. By 3, he was stuck. That familiar tension crept in, the sense that the answer existed somewhere just beyond reach, waiting for the right question. Ryan leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. And suddenly, he was somewhere else entirely. The floors had been quiet at 2 in the morning. Not silent, never silent, but hushed in the way that made every sound feel personal. The hum of fluorescent lights, the distant whir of a copier someone had forgotten to turn off, the squeak of the mop bucket wheel that always pulled to the left. Ryan had been 27 then, new to the company, wearing steel-toed boots and a badge that only opened doors after 6 p.m. "Hey," a voice had said. He turned to see Mrs. Alvarez from payroll, cardigan draped over her arm, eyes tired. "Did you know the men's restroom on 3 is flooding?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "I'll take care of it." She smiled with visible relief. "Thank you." People forget someone has to do these things. He hadn't forgotten. He never did. Cleaning offices at night taught you which desks belonged to people who stayed late, which ones were visited only for meetings, and which ones held framed photos that never moved. You learned whose trash was always sorted and whose never was. You learned that systems worked because unseen people cared enough to make them work. Ryan opened his eyes. That was the missing piece. He wasn't just replacing a supplier. He was replacing a system. He called Emily. She answered on the second ring. "If this is about supplier 17, I already told you." "It's not," Ryan said. "I think I'm looking at this wrong." "Oh, good," she replied dryly. "Nothing like a paradigm shift before the weekend." "I'm serious," he said. "All of these options work on paper, but I need one that won't collapse the moment something goes wrong." Emily was quiet. "You're looking for redundancy," she said slowly. "Not just capacity." "Yes, and that means a supplier that's already used to operating under pressure," Ryan finished. "Not one optimized for efficiency at the cost of flexibility." There was a pause. Then, "Interesting," Emily said. He smiled. "You sound surprised." "I am," she admitted. "Most people just chase cost savings." "I've seen what happens when the wrong system fails," Ryan said. "It's never the people at the top who feel it first." Her voice softened. "You really did start on the custodial team?" "Yes. I thought that was a rumor." "Nope. Third shift. 3 months. Best education I ever got." Emily laughed quietly. "All right, let me rethink the list." They hung up, but the conversation lingered with him. Later that afternoon, Ryan found himself wandering down to the loading docks. He didn't need to be there. His work was theoretical now, numbers, projections, contracts. But habits formed in the margins of a job tended to stick. "Hey, Jones," someone called. It was Mark, one of the dock supervisors, leaning against a pallet jack. "How's the glamorous office life?" Mark asked. Ryan grinned. "Less glamorous than advertised." "How's the new shipment look?" Mark shrugged. "Hawthorne's slipping. Late again." Ryan nodded. "If we had to pivot suppliers fast, what would you need?" Mark blinked. "From you. From whoever makes the call." Mark considered. "Clear communication. No last-minute changes. And a supplier who actually answers the phone." Ryan laughed. "You'd be amazed how rare that is. Not from where I stand." Ryan thanked him and headed back upstairs, his mind already rearranging priorities. That night, Emily emailed again. Supplier number 24 added. Unassuming. Domestic. Overbuilt capacity. Historically boring. Might be perfect. Ryan replied immediately. "Boring is underrated. Let's talk Monday." Her response came a minute later. "Agreed." And Ryan, "Yes? You think like someone who's had to clean up other people's messes." "That's not a criticism." Ryan stared at the screen, then typed back. "It's a skill set." On Monday, they met again, this time over video. Emily looked less formal, hair down, glasses back on. "You look tired," she said. "So do you." She smirked. "Touché. All right. Supplier 24, Midwest Fabrication Group. Family owned. No flashy branding. Overstaffed by corporate standards." Ryan nodded. "Which means slack." "Exactly. They've been passed over for years because they don't optimize to the bone." "People confuse optimization with resilience," Ryan said. Emily smiled slowly. "You're not wrong." They talked for over an hour, debating logistics, costs, and contingencies. It was efficient, focused, surprisingly easy. When they wrapped up, Emily hesitated. "Can I ask you something off the record?" she said. Ryan leaned back. "Sure. Why haven't you moved up faster?" she asked. "With your background, your instincts, you could be running things by now." Ryan considered his answer. "Because titles don't teach you how systems really work," he said. "People do." Emily watched him for a long moment. "Ryan Jones," she said. "You are an anomaly." He laughed. "I've been called worse." "I'm sure." As the call ended, Ryan felt that same unfamiliar mix of pressure and possibility. The test was ongoing, but for the first time since Susan's office, he didn't feel alone in it. Chapter 4, lines and boundaries. By the second week of working together, Ryan and Emily had developed a rhythm that surprised them both. They didn't waste time on pleasantries. Emails were concise, calls efficient. When they disagreed, it was sharp but never personal. When they agreed, it was immediate and productive. It felt less like collaboration and more like tandem motion, two people pedaling the same bike without having to look at each other to stay balanced, which was exactly why Ryan noticed the shift the moment it happened. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Emily showed up at his office unannounced. Ryan was mid-reconciliation, sleeves rolled up, glasses perched on his nose, an affectation he rarely used but secretly liked, when Carla popped her head in. Ryan? There's a very determined woman at the front desk asking for you. Ryan glanced up. Name? Emily. She did not give a last name. Or a smile. That tracked. I'll be right there, he said, already standing. Emily was pacing near the reception area. Phone pressed to her ear, voice low and clipped. Yes, I understand that, she said. But if your documentation can't withstand a compliance audit, then it doesn't matter how fast you can scale. She hung up and turned as Ryan approached. Hi, he said. She looked him up and down. You didn't tell me Midwest Secondary Plant was union negotiating new terms. Ryan frowned. Because they didn't tell me. They told someone, Emily said. And that someone just tried to downplay it. Ryan exhaled. Is it a deal breaker? No, she said. But it's a risk. One we need to account for. Agreed. She studied his face, as if searching for something. You're not panicking. I don't panic until there's nothing left to do, Ryan said. Then I make a sandwich. Despite herself, Emily smiled. Walk with me, she said. They headed outside, the spring air cool but bright. The parking lot buzzed with quiet activity. Deliveries, conversations, the hum of normal operations continuing blissfully unaware of how close things were to disruption. Emily crossed her arms. I pushed them harder than usual. They need it. They do, she agreed. But that's not why I came. Ryan waited. I've worked with a lot of executives, Emily said. Most of them want reassurance, or shortcuts, or credit. And I want accountability, she said. You want to know where it breaks before it breaks. Ryan shrugged. Someone has to mop it up when it does. She glanced at him sideways. You really can't stop bringing that up, can you? It's relevant. It is, she admitted. Which is why I need to set a boundary. Ryan's stomach tightened just slightly. Okay, he said. This project ends in 3 months, Emily said. We work well together. Too well. And I don't blur professional lines. Ryan nodded slowly. Neither do I. Her gaze sharpened. That was easy. Clarity usually is, he replied. She searched his face, perhaps expecting disappointment. Instead, she found relief. Good, she said. Then let's keep this clean. Clean is my specialty. She laughed, then sobered. One more thing, she said. You're being watched. Ryan raised an eyebrow. By whom? Your senior leadership. They're nervous. He sighed. Of course they are. They don't like that Susan gave you this much authority. Ryan met her eyes. They don't know why she trusts me. Emily tilted her head. And do I? He hesitated. Just long enough. No, he said. Not fully. That's what worries me, she said quietly. Susan Reynolds noticed everything. She noticed the way Ryan's posture changed when he spoke in meetings, more assured, less deferential. She noticed how department heads stopped questioning his data and started asking his opinion. She noticed, too, the name Emily Carter appearing with increasing frequency in reports and emails. On Thursday afternoon, she called Ryan into her office again. This time, there were no FBI agents. Sit, she said. Ryan did. You're doing well, Susan said. Better than I expected. Thank you. She studied him. You've made some people uncomfortable. He smiled faintly. That tends to happen when systems change. Susan returned the smile. Good answer. She leaned forward. Tell me about Emily Carter. Ryan blinked. Professionally, of course. She's thorough, ethical, direct, he said. She challenges assumptions and doesn't flinch under pressure. And personally? Ryan paused. That's not relevant. Susan's gaze was sharp but amused. You're learning. He nodded. I won't interfere, she said. But I will remind you of your condition. I know, Ryan said. No one knows. Not until you're ready. Yes, Susan leaned back. You are closer than you think. Ryan left her office with equal parts reassurance and unease. The supplier negotiations intensified. Midwest Fabrication proved steady but cautious. A secondary overseas supplier emerged as a partial backup, vetted aggressively by Emily's team. Contracts were drafted, revised, dismantled, rebuilt. Ryan and Emily spoke daily, sometimes twice. Once, late on a Friday, Ryan found himself still on a call with her as the building emptied. You should go home, she said. You're not getting extra points for martyrdom. I like finishing things, he replied. Perfectionist. No, Ryan said. Just thorough. She smiled through the screen. Same flaw, different label. There was a comfortable pause. Can I ask you something? Ryan said. Emily hesitated. As long as it's not about my personal life. Why procurement consulting? He asked. With your skill set, you could be anywhere. She considered. Because I like fixing invisible problems. And because I don't like being owned. Ryan nodded. I get that. Do you? Yes, he said. More than you think. She watched him carefully. You carry responsibility like it's a choice you keep making. It is. Most people don't choose it. Someone has to, Ryan said. Emily closed her laptop slowly. We should stop. He frowned. Stop what? Talking like this, she said. It's drifting. Ryan held her gaze. Then let's bring it back. She exhaled. Okay. Midwest wants a site visit next week. I'll be there. You don't have to. I want to. She smiled, just a little. Of course you do. That night, Ryan sat alone in his apartment reviewing notes. He thought about his parents, about how their divorce had taught him that adults made choices children didn't get to question, about how he'd learned early that stability was something you built, not something you inherited. He thought about Susan, about trust earned quietly over time. And, unavoidably, he thought about Emily, about the way she challenged him without trying to change him, about the line they'd drawn and how clearly he could see it. The test wasn't just professional anymore. It was personal. And the margin for error was narrowing. Chapter 5, The Almost Disaster. The call came at 7:43 a.m., which meant it was bad. Ryan was halfway through tying his shoes when his phone lit up with Mark's name from the loading docks. Mark never called before 9 unless something was actively on fire. Hey, Ryan said, already reaching for his jacket. What's wrong? Hawthorne just emailed, Mark said without preamble. They're suspending shipments effective immediately. Ryan stopped moving. Immediately as in today, Mark finished. No grace period. No partial fulfillment. Ryan closed his eyes once. I'll be there in 10. He didn't bother with coffee. By the time Ryan reached the office, the building was buzzing in that tight, electric way that signaled panic trying to wear a professional mask. Emails were flying. Meetings were being scheduled, canceled, rescheduled. People stood in small clusters, voices low, eyes darting. Susan was already in the main conference room when Ryan arrived, flanked by 3 senior managers and the general counsel. Ryan, she said as he entered. Update. Hawthorne's out, he said. Effective today. A ripple moved through the room. That's sooner than anticipated, one manager said sharply. It's sooner than they told the FBI too, Ryan replied. Which means they're scrambling. Susan nodded. Options. Ryan took a breath. Midwest can cover 15% immediately. The overseas backup can handle another 10, but only if we waive expedited shipping penalties. And the remaining 5? Someone asked. Ryan met Susan's eyes. We stretch inventory. Prioritize critical contracts. We don't shut down, but it'll be tight. The room erupted. That violates our standard operating procedures. We'll miss margins. This sets a precedent. Ryan waited. When the noise died down, he spoke calmly. Our procedures assume stable suppliers. That assumption no longer exists. Susan raised a hand. Silence fell. Ryan, she said, can you execute this without burning bridges? Yes, he said, but I'll need authority to bypass 2 approval layers. A senior VP scoffed. Absolutely not. Ryan turned to him. With respect, by the time approval's clear, we'll already be in breach. Susan considered for half a second. You have it, she said. The VP stared at her. Susan, this is his test, she said evenly. Let him take it. Ryan exhaled. Thank you. Susan met his gaze. Don't make me regret it. I won't. Ryan was back at his desk dialing Emily before the conference room door even closed behind him. She answered immediately. I was just about to call you. Hawthorne pulled the plug, Ryan said. Today. Damn it, she muttered. Okay, I'm looping in Midwest now. I need to visit their plant, Ryan said. Emily paused. Today. Yes. They're 2 hours away. I know. Another pause. Then, I'll meet you there. You don't have to. I want to, she said. And frankly, they trust me more. Ryan smiled despite the circumstances. Fair. They disconnected, and Ryan was already grabbing his coat when Carla appeared at his door. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Ask me again tomorrow. She smiled faintly. Kick some ass. The Midwest fabrication plant was exactly as Emily had described. Unassuming, clean, humming with steady activity. No flashy signage. No corporate slogans. Just people working. Emily was waiting near the front office when Ryan arrived, tablet in hand, expression focused. You look like hell, she said. You look prepared, he replied. Always. They were ushered into a meeting room with the plant manager, a stocky man named Harold who radiated cautious competence. I won't sugarcoat it, Harold said. We can scale, but it'll strain us. Ryan nodded. I don't need perfection. I need honesty. Emily watched him closely as he spoke. Not pitching, Not posturing, just laying out constraints, risks, and expectations. If this becomes unsustainable, Ryan said, I need you to tell me before it breaks. Harold studied him. Most executives don't say that. I'm not most executives. Emily smiled faintly. After an hour of negotiation, contingency planning, and uncomfortable truths, Harold leaned back. All right, he said. We'll do it. Ryan let out a breath he'd been holding all day. Thank you, he said. We won't forget this. They walked out into the late afternoon sun together, the tension finally easing. That, Emily said, was impressive. Ryan shrugged. They just needed someone to listen. She stopped walking. Ryan, she said quietly, you just made a call that will piss off half your leadership. I know. And you didn't hesitate. I couldn't, he said. People's jobs were on the line. She searched his face. You're not afraid of fallout. I'm afraid of making the wrong choice, Ryan said. Once I'm sure it's the right one, the rest is noise. Emily laughed softly. You are infuriatingly principled. I've been called worse. She stepped closer, then stopped herself. This is the part where I remind us about boundaries, she said. Ryan nodded. Right? They stood there, the moment stretching. Still, Emily added, if this blows up, I want you to know. I'd work with you again. Ryan smiled. That means a lot. It shouldn't, she said. But it does. Back at the office, the fallout came swiftly. Emails, objections, thinly veiled accusations of recklessness. Ryan answered each one calmly, with data and clarity. Susan called him in just before the end of the day. You broke protocol, she said. Yes. You took responsibility. Yes. She studied him. You protected the company. And the people, Ryan added. Susan smiled. Especially the people. She stood and extended her hand. Well done. Ryan shook it, feeling something settle into place. That night, Ryan and Emily exchanged one last message. Emily, crisis contained. For now. Ryan, couldn't have done it without you. Emily, you could have. It just would have been lonelier. Ryan stared at the screen, then typed. Ryan, thank you for not letting it be. The reply took longer this time. Emily, careful, Ryan Jones. That sounds personal. He smiled, set the phone down, and finally made himself that sandwich. The disaster had been avoided, but the distance between professional and personal had never felt thinner. Chapter 6. The truth comes out. The rumor didn't start loudly. It never did. It started as a question whispered near the espresso machine, passed sideways in an email that was never meant to be forwarded, repeated just softly enough to feel plausible by the time it reached someone important. By Wednesday afternoon, Ryan could feel it in the air. People were polite in a way that was new, careful smiles, conversations that stopped half a beat too late when he walked by. Marcus from logistics asked him if he had always worked so closely with Susan, then immediately pretended he hadn't asked anything at all. Ryan kept working. He always did. But the sense of balance he'd cultivated, the careful separation between who he was and what he did, felt thinner than it ever had. Emily noticed immediately. You're distracted, she said over video, her tone not accusatory, just observant. I'm fine, Ryan replied automatically. She arched an eyebrow. You're terrible at lying. I'm not lying, he said. I'm postponing. That's worse. He smiled faintly. I know. They were supposed to be reviewing the final Midwest contingency contract, but Emily closed the document without comment. What's happening at your company? She asked. Ryan hesitated. Just long enough. Emily leaned back in her chair. There it is. There what is? The thing you don't volunteer, she said. The thing you keep deciding other people don't need to know yet. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated. Everything is, Emily replied. That's not an excuse. He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt the weight of the choice he'd been postponing. Can we talk in person? He asked. Her expression softened slightly. Yes. They met at a quiet cafe near the river, the kind with mismatched chairs and an unspoken rule against loud conversations. Emily arrived first, already nursing a coffee, glasses on, posture alert. Ryan slid into the chair across from her. Okay, she said. Start talking. He took a breath. Susan Reynolds isn't just my CEO. Emily stilled. She's my stepmother, Ryan said. She married my dad 12 years ago. The words landed between them, heavy and undeniable. Emily's eyes searched his face, not for confirmation, but for context. You work for your stepmother, she said slowly. Yes. And no one knows. No. And she gave you this project. Yes. Emily leaned back, crossing her arms. How long were you planning on not telling me? Ryan flinched just slightly. Until it was over. Why? Because I didn't want it to matter. Emily laughed once, sharp and humorless. That's not how secrets work, Ryan. I didn't get this opportunity because of her, he said quickly. I started on the custodial team. I earned my way here. I believe that, Emily said. Then, but you let me believe something else, she interrupted. You let me believe you were navigating this without a net. Ryan's mouth closed. That wasn't fair, she continued. I evaluated your decisions, your pressure tolerance, your risk appetite, all under the assumption that you'd face the same consequences as anyone else. I do, Ryan said. If I fail, people get hurt. That doesn't change. Emily shook her head. You don't get it. It's not about punishment. It's about power. Silence stretched between them. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to doubt me, Ryan said quietly. Emily met his gaze. You should have trusted me enough to let me. That hurt more than anything she'd said so far. I'm sorry, he said. Truly. She studied him for a long moment, then exhaled. Do you know how many people I've worked with who hide behind connections? She asked. Who pretend they're self-made while quietly benefiting from proximity? Yes, Ryan said. That's why I never wanted to be one of them. And yet, she said gently, here we are. He nodded. Here we are. Emily looked out the window, watching the river slide past, unhurried and unconcerned. I don't think you're unethical, she said finally. But I do think you underestimated the cost of not being honest. Ryan swallowed. What does that cost look like? For now. She stood, gathering her coat. Distance. Emily, I need space, she said. Not professionally. The work stands. But personally, I need to recalibrate. She hesitated, then added, you don't get to decide when people are ready for the truth. Then she walked away. The fallout at work hit the next morning. Ryan was called into an emergency leadership meeting, this one decidedly less supportive than the last. Questions flew. Implications were raised. Words like optics and governance were used with surgical precision. Ryan answered everything calmly. Yes, Susan is my stepmother. No, she did not assign me the project because of that. Yes, I agreed to keep the relationship private until she believed I was ready. Yes, I understand how that looks. Susan watched him from the head of the table, her expression unreadable. When the meeting finally adjourned, she asked him to stay. You should have told them sooner, she said once they were alone. Yes, Ryan replied. I know that now. She studied him. And Emily? Ryan exhaled. She knows. Susan nodded slowly. And she needs time. That's fair, Susan said. Ryan looked at her. I never wanted to use you. I know, Susan said softly. But leadership means understanding that perception matters as much as intention. He nodded. You're still doing well, she added. Don't let this shake you. I won't, Ryan said, but it already had. That evening, Ryan went for a walk instead of going home. He thought about his parents, about how they'd kept the truth of their divorce from him, believing it would protect him. How he'd grown up and realized that protection without trust was just another kind of distance. He'd made the same mistake. His phone buzzed as he reached the bridge. A message from Emily. We need to finalize the overseas fallback clause. Call me when you're free. Professional. Clean. Controlled. Ryan typed back. Anytime. And Emily, whenever you're ready to talk about more than contracts, I'm here. No postponing. The reply didn't come immediately. When it did, it was brief. Noted. Ryan slipped the phone back into his pocket and leaned against the railing, watching the water move forward without hesitation. The truth had changed things, but it hadn't ended them. Not yet. Chapter 7, Legacy. The announcement went out at 9 a.m. company-wide meeting. Mandatory attendance. Ryan stared at the email longer than necessary. Susan hadn't warned him, which meant one of two things. Either this was routine or it was deliberate. With Susan, those were rarely mutually exclusive. The auditorium filled quickly. Ryan took a seat halfway back, deliberately not in the executive row. Old habits died hard. Around him, conversations hummed with speculation. This about Hawthorne? I heard we locked Midwest in. Someone said the FBI thing's worse than they thought. Ryan kept his eyes forward. Susan stepped onto the stage precisely on time. No notes. No hesitation. Good morning, she said, her voice carrying easily. I'm going to be direct. That was never a comforting preface. As many of you are aware, the past several weeks have tested this company's resilience, she continued. We faced an unexpected supplier failure, external scrutiny, and internal strain. A murmur rippled through the room. We did not stop production, Susan said. We did not lay off staff. And we did not compromise our standards. Ryan felt a quiet tightening in his chest. That outcome, Susan said, was not accidental. She paused, then looked directly at him. Ryan Jones, please stand. Every head turned. Ryan rose slowly, pulse steady despite the sudden heat crawling up his neck. Susan didn't rush. For 5 years, she said, Ryan has worked in nearly every operational layer of this company. He has cleaned its floors, balanced its books, and most recently, safeguarded its continuity under pressure. A few people nodded. Others looked surprised. There is something else you deserve to know, Susan said. Ryan is my stepson. The word landed like a dropped plate, sharp, unmistakable. I maintained my maiden name for legal and professional reasons. Susan continued evenly. Ryan and I agreed that our relationship would remain undisclosed until he was ready to be judged solely on his work. Ryan's jaw clenched, not from fear, but from the finality of it. That time, Susan said, is now. Silence. Then scattered applause. Not thunderous. Not performative. Real. Susan raised a hand. I will not pretend this won't prompt questions. That's fair. But understand this. Ryan was not protected from consequences. He was given responsibility, and he carried it. She turned back to Ryan. You may sit. Ryan did, legs slightly unsteady, heart unexpectedly light. The meeting concluded with operational updates and a formal announcement of the new supplier contracts. By the time people began filing out, the atmosphere had shifted from shock to curiosity. Ryan stayed seated until the room emptied. Susan joined him a moment later. You didn't tell me you were doing that, he said quietly. She smiled. I didn't want you to carry it alone anymore. He nodded. Thank you. You're ready, she said, whether you believe it yet or not. Emily watched the live stream from her office. She hadn't been invited, and she hadn't expected to be. But she'd been sent the link by someone who knew her well enough to understand that she'd want context, not gossip. She leaned back in her chair as the feed ended, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. So that's how you chose to do it, she murmured. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Ryan, I'm guessing you've seen the announcement. She hesitated, then typed. Emily, I did. A pause. Ryan, I didn't plan it that way, but I'm done hiding. Another pause. Longer this time. Emily, come by tonight, if you want to talk. Ryan exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and nerves. Ryan, I do. Emily's apartment was spare but warm. Bookshelves, bookshed of art, plants instead of decor. Ryan noticed immediately that nothing was there just to fill space. Wine? She asked, kicking off her shoes. Yes, please. They sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, the distance deliberate. You look different, Emily said. Publicly accountable does that, Ryan replied. She smiled faintly. You handled it well. I learned from someone who doesn't tolerate shortcuts. Ah, she said. Susan. Yes. They sat in silence for a moment. I was angry, Emily said finally. Not because of who she is, but because you didn't trust me with the truth. I know, Ryan said. I was wrong. You were, she agreed. But I also see why you did it. He looked at her. You do. You've been proving yourself your entire adult life, she said. Of course you didn't want an asterisk. Ryan swallowed. I just wanted to be enough. Emily set her glass down and turned fully toward him. You were, she said. Even before today. The tension eased, replaced by something steadier. So, she added, where does that leave us? Ryan met her gaze. I'd like to find out, without postponing, without hiding, and without pretending I'm not affected by you. She smiled. Really smiled. Good, she said. Because I'm terrible at pretending. They leaned toward each other, not rushed, not hesitant. Just honest. Later, as Ryan walked home under a sky finally clear of clouds, he felt the shape of the future settle into something tangible. The company would change. He would change. Legacy, he realized, wasn't about inheritance. It was about what you chose to carry forward, and who you chose to walk beside while you did. Epilogue. 1 year later, the floors were quiet again. Not the tense, anticipatory quiet of crisis, but the steady, lived-in kind, the sound of a company breathing evenly. It was just past 7 in the evening, and most of the offices were dark, lights dimmed to a practical glow. A cleaning cart rolled past at the end of the hall, its wheels squeaking in a way Ryan still found oddly comforting. Some habits never left you. Ryan Jones stood by the window of his office, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, watching the last shift change in the parking lot below. People waved to one another, laughed, left tired but unafraid of what tomorrow might bring. That mattered. A year ago, he'd been hoping to keep production running. Now, he was responsible for making sure the whole system kept moving, ethically, sustainably, and without forgetting the people who made it work. Still here. Ryan turned as Emily leaned against the doorframe, tablet tucked under her arm, hair pulled back in a loose knot that had become her end-of-day look. She didn't knock anymore. Wrapping up, he said. Old reflex. She smiled. You say that every night. And every night it's true. She crossed the room and set the tablet on his desk. Midwest just renewed for another 3 years. No drama. No emergency clauses invoked. Ryan exhaled. Boring continues to be my favorite outcome. Emily laughed. You've converted me. She glanced around his office. Still modest, still absent of trophies or self-congratulation. The only personal touch was a framed photo on the bookshelf. Ryan, Emily, his dad, and Susan at a company picnic, all mid-laugh. None of them looking particularly powerful. Just happy. Susan had officially stepped back from day-to-day operations 6 months earlier, retaining an advisory role she took seriously but never abused. The transition had been deliberate, public, and, despite early skepticism, remarkably smooth. Respect had done what secrecy never could. You coming? Emily asked. Your dad's already texted twice. He's pretending not to be impatient, but he's terrible at it. Ryan smiled. He gets that from me. They walked out together, lights clicking off behind them as they went. The custodial team was just starting their rounds, and Ryan paused instinctively. Hey, he called softly. One of the workers looked up. Yeah, thanks for keeping the place running. The man grinned. Someone's gotta. Ryan nodded. Exactly. Outside, the evening air was cool, the sky streaked with the last color of sunset. Emily slipped her hand into his as they crossed the lot. You know, she said, a year ago I thought you were an anomaly. And now I know you're just consistent. He laughed. High praise. It is, she said. From me. They reached the car and Ryan paused, taking one last look at the building, at the place that had tested him, shaped him, and taught him that legacy wasn't something you inherited quietly. It was something you earned out loud. Ready? Emily asked. Yes, Ryan said, without hesitation. And for once, there was nothing he needed to postpone.